I don't know any parent who doesn't get angry with their kids, sometimes at least. I know that I do. I know that my wife does, and so do many of my parent friends. Kids just have a habit of being able to push our buttons. And normally they do it at a time when we're already stretched to the max in terms of our emotions and stress. But anger is actually a very normal and very human emotion. In and of itself, it's not bad. But when we don't control our anger and we lash out at our children, either verbally, physically, or emotionally, then we really need to take a step back as parents and try to figure out the way to control it, how to control our anger and emotions, because that's just not good for us and especially for our kids. But that poses one very important question. What causes anger? What causes our anger specifically as parents? Now, there can be many reasons we get angry. Life with children is a constant juggling act. We've got to keep all of those balls up in the air and all at the same time. We don't just have ourselves to look after anymore, and raising children can add so much more into the mix that we can often feel overwhelmed and overcome by it. On top of our normal work and chores, you have to add in all of those things that kids need and kids do, like family time, extracurricular activities, play dates, help with homework, and generally sticking to a schedule that is normally full to the brim with barely any downtime for us as parents. I mean, tell me, when have you last time had time just to yourself? It's a big job, and often our kids don't want to go along with it, with any of it. We end up losing our patience with them, with life, with the stress of it all. And that's just it. That is what leads us to lash out suddenly. There can be other reasons for anger too, though. We can have conflict in our other relationships, whether with our parents, partners, or at work with our colleagues or bosses. We could be dealing with money worries, work stress, illness, or our own mental or physical health problem. There's just so many things that life can throw your way. Our anger could also come from our past experiences, the way we were brought up. We repeat the same mistakes that our parents made with us, and in doing so, we may doom our kids to repeat the same things with their children. Now, I tend to get angry when I'm stressed with work, though my wife struggles when she has a lack of sleep or she doesn't get enough time to herself. So you see, we all have our different triggers that lead to our anger. And that can be the key to figuring out how to actually control it in that moment. Because none of us ever plan on getting angry. It's not like it's something that we're planning to do or we want to do. We don't wake up and say, okay, today I'm going to yell at my kids. No, we react in a moment. But here's the thing, we're not children. We're adults and we can think and act at the same time. It's not like we should just lash out because that is our current emotional state and we can't control it. We have to be fully aware of our emotional state and everything that life throws our way so that we can sort of prevent it. So what are the signs of anger? Because this is the very first thing that we need to learn to recognize so that we can nip the anger in the bud before it takes over, before we let it go too far. Anger makes our body respond in a similar way to fear and stress. Our body essentially activates our flight or fight response. So to begin with, you may start to feel agitated and irritable. You might clench your teeth or ball up your fists. Your shoulders will tense up and your heart rate and breathing will quicken. It's very similar to stress, and I'm sure all of you have experienced it. The cliche of an angry red face comes from the increased blood flow to your extremities as your body literally gears up for a fight. And in this respect, it's very similar to fighting mode. But in this moment, remember, this is in response to your child, not to another adult or danger. Those small bundles of joy that we're trying to raise to be the most awesome people that they can be and have the best memories of their childhood to look back onto. so that they can pass it on to the future generations. You don't want to fight your children. You don't want to fight them. They're your kids. So think about how they see you. Someone 2 or 3 times their size, behaving in an angry or threatening manner. Someone who is making them feel scared and fearful. You see, your anger doesn't just change you. It also changes your child and your relationship with them. So what kind of effects can anger actually have on your child? How can you influence your child negatively if you let the anger go? In the short term, children who have to deal with their parents who are angry on a regular basis may start showing more anger themselves. They may become more aggressive, rude, or start acting out more with others, with their friends or at school. This can then cause your own anger to continue as you deal with their negative behavior. And so the cycle of anger goes on. In the long term, it could lower your kids' self-esteem, especially if you become verbally abusive and say mean things to them, or you call them names. Verbal or physical abuse can have a very long-lasting and damaging effect on your child. They may also suffer from the feelings of worthlessness and become depressed or withdrawn. As adults, they may exhibit more antisocial behaviors, be more aggressive towards others, have less empathy, as well as continuing mental health problems. So how can we calm down and behave in a more measured and controlled way? So let me offer you a few things that you can do. These are the steps that I would recommend. Like I said before, identifying what causes your anger is the key to learning how to control it. If it's because of something you personally need, like my wife needing more sleep, then try to ensure that you get those things so that it doesn't affect your mood. If it's an external factor like money or work worries, then that can be a tough one to overcome, but just by knowing where the anxiety comes from can actually help you realize that what you're angry about doesn't really have anything to do with your kids, that there's an underlying factor to all of it, to your anxiety and to your anger. So when your kids are fighting in the back of the car or refusing to finish their homework, try to remember that it's not a big deal in a grand scheme of things. All kids do that. So there's no need to get overly worked up. Your kids are going to do things that make you angry at some point in time. So don't let it surprise you when it happens. And don't use it as an excuse to lash out just because you are really angry about work or something else. If you find that there are definite triggers that are within your control, like arguments over chores, then try to let your kids know what the rules are ahead of the time. Putting in place a chore chart, talking to your kids about it, and setting up a reasonable set of consequences for not doing them is a pretty good way to start. Otherwise, maybe think through scenarios in your head and decide on how you'll work through them. What will the consequences be for fighting with a sibling or for general bad behavior? Talk them through with your partner if you have one, and make an agreement to try and stick to those rules together so that you show united front and you can support each other. When you feel yourself getting angry, instead of just letting the emotion flood over you, giving into it, take control of it. Acknowledge that you're getting angry, but without letting it explode out of you, either verbally or physically. Remember, it's not a bad emotion, it's what you do to deal with it that counts. When my kids get angry, I tell them to go and take 5 minutes to calm down. Or sometimes, when that's not appropriate, I redirect them. Sometimes we practice slow, deep breathing to calm their minds down, to slow everything down. What it actually does, it allows the brain time to slow down, move out of the fight or flight response, and think more clearly. This works just as well for adults. Taking a deep breath and then slowly releasing it several times until your heart and breathing starts to return to normal can help. Or counting down slowly from 10 to 0, just in your head though. Don't do countdown from 10 to 0, you're not a rocket to launch. If you can safely take time away from your child, they're old enough to understand, then simply say, I'm too angry to talk with you right now. I need to calm down, so I'm gonna take a walk. Then do something that you know helps you to put you back into a good state of mind, like dancing or listening to music, listening to podcasts. Taking time to calm down isn't the same as backing down, and it can actually teach your child how to deal with their own anger by seeing and observing what you're doing, how to deal with it, and the active approach that you're taking in response to dealing with your anger. Once you're calm, decide how you want to deal with the situation and then return to it to deal with it in a calm manner. Decide on any action that needs to be taken when you're calm rather than acting irrationally when you're full of anger. Once you've taken action on something in anger, then we feel like if we change our minds later on because we realize that we were either too harsh or it was just silly, it will make us look weak and inconsistent in front of our kids. And that's not a good way of dealing with it. So choosing to deal with it after you've had time to calm down will mean that you won't regret your decisions and actions later. If you did lose your temper, then don't hesitate to apologize to your child. Anger is okay, lashing out isn't. And apology goes a long way either way. Look at what triggered your anger in the first place. Was there something that could have been done beforehand to stop it from happening? How did the situation even escalate? Did you need to talk to your child or your partner about the situation so they can change things for the better in the future? And lastly, is this something that you've been dealing with for a while, or is this anger becoming excessive? If so, you should consider getting professional help to help you manage your anger. And there's no shame in asking for help. There's so many services online that you can reach out to, and you should. Just because we get angry doesn't mean we don't love our kids after all. If we can learn to deal with our anger with a measured approach, then our kids will definitely benefit from that, now and in the future. Alright guys, I hope that this helped you to try to overcome some of your anger issues and figure out how to deal with it. Remember to like the video and to subscribe to the channel for more awesome topics on parenting from Wondershare FamiSafe. Our team is always excited about any comments that you guys send our way, so if you want to share your experiences or any other tips on how to deal with anger or how you deal with it, then write it down and I'm going to share it with the whole team. In the meantime, that's it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!